Picture a woman in a small apartment in Chengdu, China. It is 6 in the morning. She is already in the kitchen, cutting vegetables with quiet precision, the steam rising from a pot of congee she has been tending since before her child woke up. Her 9-year-old daughter shuffles in, still half asleep, and sits at the table without being asked. The mother places a bowl in front of her, adjusts the collar of her school uniform without a word, and goes back to stirring the pot. There is no "good morning, sweetheart." No "I love you, baby." No affirmation, no praise, no hug. And yet, watching this scene, something feels unmistakably warm. Something feels completely, quietly whole. If you grew up in the West, your first instinct might be to feel sorry for that little girl. You might wonder whether she feels seen, whether she feels loved, whether the silence between mother and daughter is a wound being carved slowly, invisibly, into childhood. That instinct is understandable. It is also, according to decades of cross-cultural psychology and the lived outcomes of millions of Chinese families, almost entirely wrong. There is a concept in Chinese culture called qike, written with 2 characters, one meaning to eat and one meaning bitterness. Together, they form a phrase that means the ability to endure hardship, to swallow difficulty without complaint, and to find in that endurance a quiet form of strength. Chinese mothers do not simply teach this concept. They live it, and they transmit it not through words but through everything they do and everything they deliberately do not say. The mother in Chengdu is not withholding love. She is delivering it in the only language she believes truly builds a human being. There is a second concept that sits at the heart of Chinese parenting, and it is one that has no clean English equivalent. Guān is often translated loosely as to govern or to manage, but its deeper meaning in the context of family is something closer to love by holding close, watching carefully, and shaping with intention. Chinese parents do not say "I love you" because in their framework, love is not a declaration. It is a practice. It is the meal prepared before dawn. It is the homework checked at the kitchen table every night. It is the strict standard held firmly because the parent believes, with absolute conviction, that the child is capable of meeting it. Guān is not warmth withheld. It is warmth expressed through structure, discipline, and relentless investment in the child's future. And then, there is a third idea, one that may be the most challenging for Western parents to absorb. Miànzi, written with characters that together suggest the surface or face that one presents to the world, refers to social dignity, reputation, and the honor that a family carries publicly. In Chinese culture, a child who grows up with strong Miànzi is a child who has been taught to take responsibility seriously, to not embarrass themselves or their family, and to understand that their actions ripple outward into the community. This is not vanity. It is a form of accountability that begins in childhood and shapes every decision a person makes for the rest of their life. Western parenting has largely abandoned this concept, trading it for radical individualism, the idea that a child's feelings always come first, that self-expression should never be curbed, that praise must be constant to preserve confidence. The data, increasingly, suggests this trade has come at a steep cost. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, published findings in the journal Child Development that examined emotional resilience in children across multiple cultural backgrounds. What they found was striking. Children raised in environments where parents expressed love primarily through action, through high expectations, structured routines, and consistent sacrifice, rather than verbal affirmation, showed significantly higher rates of what psychologists call emotional regulation, the ability to manage frustration, delay gratification, and recover quickly from setbacks. These children were not colder or more anxious. In many measures, they were more emotionally stable than their peers raised in high praise, high verbal affirmation households. The researchers noted that the absence of constant verbal reassurance did not create insecurity. Instead, it created children who had learned to find security within themselves rather than waiting for it to arrive from outside. This is the piece that Western parenting culture has misunderstood for decades. The self-esteem movement, which took hold in American schools and homes beginning in the 1980s, was built on the belief that children needed to be told they were special, talented, and loved loudly, frequently, and unconditionally in order to thrive. What followed was several generations of children who grew up hearing that they were exceptional and then entered a world that did not confirm it. The psychological fallout has been well documented. Rates of anxiety, depression, and narcissistic personality patterns in young adults rose sharply through the 1990s and 2000s. Researchers at San Diego State University, publishing in the journal Psychological Science, analyzed data spanning over 50 years and found that measures of narcissism in American college students had risen steadily alongside the rise of the self-esteem parenting movement. The correlation was uncomfortable, but it pointed towards something important. Telling children they are wonderful does not make them resilient. It makes them dependent on being told they are wonderful. Chinese mothers have known this intuitively for centuries, not because they are cold, not because they do not feel the same surge of love that every parent feels when they look at their child, but because the Chinese understanding of love is fundamentally different from the Western one. In the Western model, love is primarily emotional and expressive. It is something you feel and then verbalize so that the other person knows you feel it. In the Chinese model, love is primarily functional and sacrificial. It is something you do, at great cost to yourself, so that the other person becomes capable of living well without you. The Chinese mother wakes before dawn not because she is performing maternal duty. She wakes before dawn because the act of waking before dawn, of choosing her child's nourishment over her own sleep, is the truest sentence she knows how to speak. Her child does not need to hear "I love you" because the bowl of congee, warm and ready, says it with a completeness that words rarely achieve. This does not mean the Chinese approach is without tension. Many adult children of traditional Chinese parents describe complicated feelings, a deep sense of being cared for, alongside a hunger for the verbal tenderness they did not receive. Psychologists note that the approach works most powerfully when the high expectations are accompanied by genuine warmth in action, when the discipline is visibly rooted in sacrifice and not in control for its own sake. The goal is not silence. The goal is a specific kind of language, one spoken in presence, in preparation, in showing up completely for another person's life. So, what can you actually take from this tonight, in your own home, with your own children? Here is your first practice. For 1 week, replace one verbal affirmation with a physical act of preparation. Instead of telling your child you are proud of them after a test, prepare their study space before they sit down to study. Instead of saying, "I love you" at bedtime, spend 5 minutes organizing what they need for tomorrow so that their morning begins with evidence of your care rather than words about it. Notice how they respond. Notice how you feel. Actions experienced in the body carry a different weight than words processed by the mind. Here is your second practice. Introduce a small, consistent standard in your home and hold it without apology. It does not have to be large. It might be that shoes are placed by the door every evening, or that dinner is eaten together without phones 4 nights a week, or that your child completes one responsibility before any screen time begins. The standard itself matters less than your consistency in holding it. When a child experiences a parent who means what they say and follows through without drama, they internalize something profound: that the world has structure, that structure is safe, and that they are capable of meeting what is asked of them. This is the quiet foundation of genuine confidence. Here is your third practice. Resist the reflex to rescue your child from discomfort immediately. The next time your child struggles with something, a difficult homework problem, a conflict with a friend, a task they find boring or hard, wait. Sit with them. Be present. But let them feel the friction of the difficulty for a few minutes before you intervene. The Chinese concept of qike, eating bitterness, is not about exposing children to unnecessary suffering. It is about allowing them to discover that they can move through difficulty without falling apart. Every small experience of endurance builds a layer of inner confidence that no amount of external praise can manufacture. The woman in Chengdu finishes stirring the pot. Her daughter has eaten. She buttons her coat, picks up her school bag, and heads toward the door. The mother does not say, "Have a wonderful day." She does not say, "I love you, be careful." She checks, briefly, that the collar is straight. Then she turns back to the kitchen. The daughter does not feel unloved. She feels prepared. She feels held by something sturdier than words. She feels, in a way she may not be able to articulate for another 20 years, that someone has arranged the whole world to be slightly more manageable for her, and that arrangement is the oldest, most honest form of devotion there is. If this video shifted something in the way you see love and parenting, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more on how the world's wisest cultures quietly build children who are strong, calm, and deeply capable, subscribe. There's a lot more coming. See you in the next one.